All right. Erika, you ready? We're in.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have back Erika Shershun. Erika, welcome back.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be back.
Awesome. So Erika is a somatic psychotherapist who specializes in helping sexual trauma survivors reclaim the life they were meant to live. She's the author of the Healing Sexual Trauma Workbook and also of the forthcoming Healing Sexual Trauma Guided Journal, due out March 1st. That's March 2025. She also teaches the PESI sexual trauma clinical training. Her approach is trauma informed, rooted in somatic principles, drawing on neuroscience and integrative modalities like EMDR, energy psychology, parts work, and mindfulness. Erika, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to get into the book, the new book coming out. But before we do, I just want to get some background on you. But before we get there, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I'm currently in San Francisco. Where I'm from originally is many places. We moved around when I was a child. So I was born in Japan, and then we came to the States and moved around the States quite a bit. So um, I don't claim any one of those places as being where I'm from.
Okay. So very excited about the new book, the Healing Sexual Trauma Guided Journal. Now, I'm guessing this is based on your previous book, the Healing
It,
Sexual Trauma Work.
yeah,
Okay.
there's overlap with
Okay.
the previous book. There's also some things that aren't in the previous book
Okay.
in this book, and
So
vice versa.
let's kind of move into that, but by way of kind of talking about how this started for you. How the heck did you get here to this point, to this specialization, to this, I'm sure what is probably a calling in a sense.
Yeah. So, I was on the show about, I'm not sure how long ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and we went quite a bit into my trauma story. It didn't cover all of it, but it covered quite a bit of it. And so I don't want to repeat all of that. It'll end up taking up the whole time again. But to summarize it, I am a survivor of both early childhood and then young adult sexual trauma, and and there were also some other big traumas in my childhood, and I sought healing when I got to a place where I could scrape together enough money to go to therapy. And I did that for 17 years, and I had minimal results. And when at that point of when it had been 17 years, I had an experience where I was in a class, and it was a body workers class, and a specialty in that field. And my hands went completely numb, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was dissociating, and then I started having flashbacks. And it was at that point that I finally realized that really at the root of so much of what I was going to therapy for was these big sexual traumas, these
Mhm.
big T traumas that were causing me a lot of symptoms and issues that um, I just wasn't, like I said, I wasn't getting results in talk therapy. And so I started researching what to do about trauma that's stored in the body, because the symptoms were so intense in my body. And that was when I first learned about somatic work. And I decided to shift gears and go in to grad school for somatic psychotherapy, and ended up focusing on trauma. And
And this was after like 17 years
yes,
of, I'm assuming, traditional talk therapy or
that's
and the
right.
like. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something I see frequently. Many clients I've worked with have gone to 5 years, 20 years of talk therapy and not gotten symptom reductions. And like in my case, their symptoms actually got worse.
Hmm.
And, that could be a couple things. Like one way I view it is that sometimes our symptoms get worse when our systems feel resourced enough to heal them. And it's sort of, your body's inner wisdom like yelling to you, pay
Right.
attention, you've got to do something about this, and now is the time. Because the truth is people are not always ready when the trauma happens. They don't always have enough resources, and I'm talking about all types of resources. So we're talking about external and internal resources. And it's by no fault of their own. It's just the circumstances they're in and may have been born into. And it's what's going on in their life and where they're at. So I always look at it as a positive when people's systems suddenly start to yell out like,
Right. Right.
"Listen to me, do something now." And the difficulty there is people don't feel ready often. Like it's hard experiencing those symptoms, so it doesn't feel like it's a positive thing.
Hmm.
But I try to help people see the positive side of it, that they are ready.
So you have this experience in this class, which inspires you to pursue therapy or becoming a therapist. You go through graduate school, and at what point? First of all, I want to congratulate you on the book or books. I mean, I think it's a huge accomplishment, right? To write a book. I wrote a book. It didn't get published, so I know how much stuff goes into it. But well, let's talk about the book, the Healing Sexual Trauma Guided Journal that's due out in March. What was the impetus for this book, Erica, and who's it for?
So the book is for any survivor of sexual trauma, and also a lot of therapists are using the book with their clients in session. So what inspired the book is while I was trying to heal, things things got a little worse while I was in grad school, and I had some other factors playing into it, but I ended up being diagnosed with PTSD at that time. And so it was a real struggle going through grad school with all of this going on. And I, still went to a series of therapists while in grad school. It was a requirement, which I think is a great thing. And not all grad school programs do that. I
Hmm.
require that, but I still didn't get the support I needed. Like no one was giving me like tools to say like this is what's happening in your system. This is why you're doing this, and this is what will help. And if you do this on a regular basis, this will lead to results and this will
Right.
help you. And no one ever gave me that. So that's what I was desperately seeking. And so I started finding things on my own, and also some additional trainings I was taking outside of grad school. And I started piecing together the things that worked. And then as I started seeing clients, survivors kept finding their way to me. So, I could see what was helping them, what was working for
Hmm.
them. And I looked at the books that were out there, and none of them really spoke to me at the time. Um,
Well, let me interject here. Couple things. You're saying a lot of stuff that it's so interesting. I want to highlight in a sense. You said you were searching, nothing, no one was really there to provide some resources for you. What did you find? Give us one or two things that you did find that did work for you, that did help you.
the first thing I found is an exercise called toe tapping. It's a traditional Chinese medicine exercise, and it's quite simple. You lie down on any surface and you just tap your big toes together. And your
Hmm.
heels are a little bit apart, and you just get this rhythm going.
I'm going to
And
do that right now under my desk here.
but you have to be lying down.
Okay, okay.
But I mean, you can try it that way. It's not going to give you the same results. Um, but I read about it in a book. It was a book by a doctor, a Western doctor, who's also trained in Eastern medicine. And it goes back hundreds or thousands of years.
Wow.
So it's not like a new practice. I believe she didn't talk about this, but it makes sense that it's using the meridian system, and that those are pressure points
Right.
where you're tapping together just below the nail on your big toes, where the widest part of the toe. So you're hitting there.
Okay. Wow.
So it was the first thing that helped to start reduce my flashbacks and decrease the
Right.
frequency and the intensity. And it was like, it doesn't just happen like overnight.
Right.
It's gradual, but it started to happen quickly. Um,
I can imagine you reading this thinking, wow, let me try toe tapping. I mean, I don't want to project here, but you must have been like, I'll try anything
yeah.
that's gonna, I mean, it sounds, I don't want to say crazy, but
Mhm.
look, whatever works. So you started this. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I, in grad school, because I was in a somatic program,
Yeah.
we'd often start any sort of experiential we were doing. We would be instructed to ground first, but no one ever explained why do we have to ground? Like, what is,
Right.
I guess it's just assumed everyone knows, but I didn't know like fully what that meant and why. And so I knew enough to know when I would go into a flashback or get triggered, like you're not really in your body, you're not fully. Um, I mean, there's a whole range of how much you're in your body or you're not in your body. Your energy, we're talking about here. Um, so to the extreme, some people actually feel out of their body, but I knew I wasn't grounded. So when I read about it's a grounding technique. I thought, maybe this will help, but I didn't know it would help as much as it helped. Like, she
Yeah.
didn't say this helps with flashbacks.
Right.
And I wasn't doing it when I was having a flashback. So what you do is you make a practice of doing it every day. So I would do it every day for 5 minutes, which is like minimum. It would have been better if I did it every day for twice for 5 minutes or
Yeah.
10 minutes. Like for anxiety, it's really good to do twice a day for 10 minutes. But it's cumulative, it builds up. And she did share in the book, um, and I think her name's Emery Chasen, but I'm not certain if I have that exactly right. But she did share that she has all of her clients do it because it moves the energy, it helps the flow of energy in the body.
Mm.
And from the Eastern lens, when the energy isn't flowing, blockages are created. And so this helps to gradually undo those blockages, from what she said. Um,
Wow.
so so I lost my train of thought for what I was,
Yeah.
why I brought her up, but
Well,
oh, just that, like, it didn't say it was gonna help with that, but because it's cumulative and it grounds you, it
yep.
did help with that. And so, oh, I was gonna say, she said that she'll have clients come back after several years who, all of a sudden their symptoms are back, and the first thing she'll ask them is, "Are you doing your toe tapping?" And they'll say, "No." And she's like, "Why not?" Um, so that was enough to, like, convince me it was worth giving it a try, 'cause
Wow. Very, very interesting. So, um, I'm assuming that that's in the book?
I mention it briefly in the journal, but it's in the Healing Sexual Trauma Workbook in the first chapter, and, and I have that for free on my website as a download, and I also have another download that it's in on my website that's
Okay.
free.
So the book, the Healing Sexual Trauma Guided Journal, you said it was for survivors, therapists are using it. What did you want to do with the book?
So what I wanted was to have, like, people that were like me. I knew there has to be a lot of them out there who are desperately searching for help with their symptoms and trying to feel better and heal, and they're not getting results, or they don't, like, I didn't have money for a time to go to therapy. Um, so, they're struggling to have a resource that was actually going to help them get some results. That's what I wanted to see. And there wasn't any books that were body based out there for healing from sexual trauma, with the exception of Stacey Haynes' book,
Hmm.
which was really geared toward the sexual part of sexual trauma. And a lot of survivors are not ready to go there when they want to start healing. Like,
You mean in
many of
terms of
them,
healing, the focus is on the sexual part? I
yeah.
see.
Yeah, it's very much about sexuality and how it impacts, how the trauma impacts you that way. So it's a good book, but like I said, so many survivors, that's not what they're thinking about. They're
Hmm.
not worried about having sex. They're really turned off from it for a time. Many, I mean, it can go either way. Um, you can have a sexual aversion, or it can go the other extreme to sexual compulsion. And you can have, like, repetition compulsion at play there with the reenactment and hoping to find a better outcome on an unconscious level. It's always
Oh.
operating on an unconscious level. And so even when that's brought to survivors' awareness, they often don't want to go to a book that the focus is sexuality, um, as they're healing. So,
So, given that, what would you say the focus of this book is?
well, it's integrative healing, the whole system, the whole body. We're not just thinking about our sexuality. We're thinking about, yeah, all the ways trauma has impacted us and why our body does what it does and did what it did. And understanding that alone is so healing. To understand what happens to trauma and memory, why your memory is as it is about the traumatic event, which, again, there's a spectrum, but the memory doesn't encode in the
Hmm.
same way, the mind, during a traumatic event. So we don't have the same kind of memory recall. Um, so understanding that, it's so helpful. So many survivors are just beat themselves up because the way their body responded, like, I should have done this, I should have done
Right.
that, or the way they don't remember, or there's just, so many I mean, the gaps in memory. There's so many ways that survivors are hard on themselves when none of it was their fault and their
Mhm.
body was just doing the best it could to keep them alive. Because the body always goes towards survival, and that's what their body did. That's what all of our bodies did in a traumatic circumstance. So, um, and we're here, right? So
Mhm.
we survived. It did what it needed to do to help you survive.
In addition to that kind of framing and context and psychoeducation, what else are you including in the book?
So in both books, there's practices. There's somatic, body-based practices, and some other practices that are a combination of things. The workbook has more practices in it. The guided journal, I have 5 foundational practices so that it's really clear what I want people to prioritize. In the workbook, there's quite a few more, and um, so I felt like it would help to have it like these are the ones you've really, if you do nothing else, do these. And I introduce them one chapter at a time, except the last two are in the fourth chapter. So it's not overwhelming, and it doesn't take a lot of time to do them. So usually they can be done in 12 minutes a day. Other than when you're having symptoms, you're going to need to do one of them
Mhm.
more frequently.
Erica, what did you take from your experience working with clients that you put into this book?
Mm. Um, I think this book, I what I love about the new book, the journal, is that it really flows from one topic into the next. And I approached it more like I'm talking to a client all the way through. And the experience of writing it also really flowed. Um, excuse me, just need a tissue. Um, so it feels gentle that way. And I, yeah, I feel like I took more than anything else, just that, like the client's presence, the um, hmm, having a hard time putting it into words, but all the all the desire that they have to heal, and they're suffering, like just really holding that,
Mhm.
and holding the knowing that they can heal, that it's possible, and it doesn't have to take years. On
Mhm.
average, my clients see me for 1 year. If there's a lot of other types of childhood traumas, so it's usually a CPTSD diagnosis, 2 years is the average. So it really doesn't need to be years and years of therapy.
It's interesting now we're living in a time, excuse me, in a culture where I think we are talking more about sexual assault and healing and, to what degree that's helping people. I'm not sure. I think it's maybe helping somewhat, but I'm interested in how to what degree this culture, the Me Too movement, how did this impact your work, your book? How did you want to situate this work that you're doing, the book?
Well, I think the Me Too movement has helped quite a bit to give survivors the courage to seek help and also to speak out. In some cases, it's a very much an individual choice, and there's not a right or wrong about speaking out. Um, but those who want to, I think it's really helped support that. Um, but this political climate is quite challenging. Um, for all the gain that happened with the Me Too movement, there's this pushback. My book got banned. I mean, like, why ban a book that helps people heal? It's kind of twisted, to say
Where
the
did it get
least.
banned?
Well, that was in Michigan.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and in 2022, it was banned in Michigan, and in a school district. Um, and it was available in the library. It wasn't like some required reading. It was something there for people who needed it. And someone decided they shouldn't have that
right,
resource.
right.
Um, so just like all these nominations being paraded in front of us that are accused of sexual assault and the Supreme Court. I mean, it's just the political climate is pretty horrendous right now. Um, and it really does feel like a backlash against survivors in part. Um, so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Yeah, it does. I appreciate that. I was just curious on your experience, your personal experience, your professional experience that has all come into this work. I mean, just talking to you, you can feel how much of yourself you've put into this book and the caring you have, the passion you have, and the compassion you have, and it's inspiring.
oh, thank you. Thank you. I am, you asked about my clients. I'm very much inspired by them and seeing their growth and their healing taking place in real time, like week after week. That's so inspiring to me.
The idea that people can get better, and a lot of times I think we don't feel that. We don't. What do you mean I can get better? Really? Knowing that, like owning that, like you said, in and of itself can be really healing or a step towards healing.
Yeah, yeah. And often we as therapists have to hold that for clients until they start to see some movement and can begin to let in, yes, it's possible.
So as we kind of wind down here, for the a lot of obviously a lot of therapists, mental health clinicians of all kinds are listening to this, and you said survivors as well as therapists are uh, utilizing this book. What is your hope for the book?
Mm. So that it reaches as many survivors that can benefit from it. Um, yeah, I really want to just help more and more people have
Hmm.
that
And is
healing
there
that
is there a particular uh, kind of like target audience? I know you said survivors, and you also said there are certain books out there, or maybe it was a certain book out there, for example, that focuses more on the sexual part of this. It sounds like yours focuses maybe less on that. You know, is there a particular target audience for this? Someone who might want to work more, obviously somatically or et cetera.
well, see, I don't believe you can heal from trauma without working somatically. So um, I feel that across the board. I don't think you'll fully heal if you don't fully embody. So the Healing Sexual Trauma Workbook, I brought in polyvagal theory and I hadn't seen that. This was in 2021, excuse me. And I hadn't seen any books on sexual trauma talking about how to work with the nervous system. And it's out there more now. Which is great. It's really getting out there now, but um, it's such a huge piece of
Yeah.
the work and getting triggered. And how do you ignore that? Like, that's the body. That's how we go into a dysregulated state, is our nervous system. How do you ignore that in trauma healing? That's why I don't think it's possible to heal trauma without bringing in the body.
Once
Um,
again, I'm speaking with, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
well, I feel like I didn't answer your whole question, but in terms of the audience, I mean, I think it finds its audience. I like the Healing Sexual Trauma Workbook got published in Spanish, Portuguese, sorry, not Polish, not Portuguese, sorry,
Well,
Spanish, Polish, and Russian. So, I got a letter from someone in Poland who had been through horrible trauma. And so I hope it's reaching some of the people that have going through war crimes
wow.
there. Um, and um, and then, all any type of sexual trauma. I just feel like anyone who has been through it, they need help healing.
Yeah.
And there's some things they could take from the book, and they might not, the sexual trauma workbook, they're not meant to do every practice in it. They're meant to find what works for them. Um, but I think the guided journal is, there's very little that wouldn't work for everyone in there.
Mhm.
And, I do talk about the sexual healing piece of it a little more in the workbook. I touch on it in the journal, but don't go too in depth about it. I mean, it's an important piece of it for some people, because for some people, that's where their symptoms are, like they might be married and it might be really impacting them, their relationship. And of course, that's a really horrible thing to have to go through, and they need support and healing from that. But my point earlier is just that that's not where, in my experience, that's not where most survivors are coming in.
As a reminder, I'm speaking with Erika Shershun. The new book coming out is titled The Healing Sexual Trauma Guided Journal, due out in March of 2025. All right, Erika, how do people learn more about you, perhaps get in touch with you, and certainly learn more about the book?
So they can go to healingsexualtrauma.com, and there they will find the first chapter of the workbook, a free download on that. And then they will also see there, if they're interested, a free ebook called The Many Ways to Ground. So if so they can choose what grounding practice would feel best to them. So there, and then my therapy website is feltsenseresonance.com, or they can go to erikashershun.therapy.com.
Okay. We'll have those linked up at the show notes page here at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Erika, again, congratulations on the book. Really inspiring talking to you. I mean, I can feel this is what you do. You feel it, right? I mean, this is the work you do, and it just resonates. And I just find it so inspiring. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Guy. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience and with you. Thank you.
All right, we'll be in touch. Take care.